worked out with youth agency. I'm sure we could work something out with them as well. Yes, Mr. Szymanski.
For our consideration with respect to executive session, I take our fiduciary obligation extremely seriously with respect to the sale of town-owned property. And before we go into executive session, I must ask if we're going to discuss the sales price. Do we have an appraisal from someone who's a certified appraisal with respect to arriving at a price? If not, I feel it's too preliminary to discuss the sales price. I think we owe it to the taxpayers, instead of just talking in generalities, that we need to have something to base our discussion of a sales price off of.
Well, we're having a discussion, and I've got Mr. Bielmeyer here to update us on that. Legal, would you care to kind of render an opinion on the appropriateness of...
Yeah, let me just quickly say there's a provision in FOIA, which is 1-206D, that provides for executive session as being proper when there's going to be a discussion that bears on the sale of real estate, and if publicity regarding that sale may impair in any way or impact adversely the sale price. And I think that this is a decision of this council, obviously, and to go into executive session, it needs to pass by 2/3 under our rules, as well as the FOIA itself. And I think it's a reasonable basis to find that a public discussion of the price, sale price, potential sale price, listing price, or even the sale price, could adversely impact ultimately the actual transaction. Now, just to be clear, there used to be a provision of FOIA that was written differently. It was written to say that you could only go into executive session when public disclosure or discussion of the sale price would likely cause a likelihood of an increased price, which meant, so the courts interpreted that as only when the town was acquiring property. The acquisition of property was only a proper subject for executive session. But FOIA was changed, this particular exemption was changed in 2013, so that it can be either the sale of municipally owned property or the acquisition by municipality of property. As if either is impacted, it's a proper ground for executive session.
Mr. Tower, does that address Mr. Bass's email that was sent out and his concerns about the appropriateness of executive session?
Yeah, basically, Mr. Bass had circulated an email reciting some previous FOIA commission opinions that said that it was not appropriate to go into executive session unless the town was engaged in the acquisition of real property.
That's based on prior language.
That's the old statute. In 2013, that changed, and basically, anytime a public dialogue of potential sale by the municipality of a municipally owned property could impact adversely the price, whether it's the, let me say this, listing price, negotiated price, or eventually a sale price, you are within your prerogatives to decide to go in executive session. Am I saying you must? No. Am I saying you can? Yes. And am I also saying, is it by a 2/3 standard? Yes. Of those members present.
Mr. Bass.
Let me also say, we do advise that if you agree that there is a reasonable impact on the price, listing price, asking price, sale price, you should state that on the record and agree to that as a body. Because it's gonna, that record would be possibly challenged in the FOIA Commission challenge.
All right. Let me just follow up on that, Mr. Bass, before. I mean, is there anybody that disagrees that discussing in public session what the town would want to possibly sell that property for, that it would adversely impact the price? Does anybody disagree with that? And if so, that's why. All right, Mr. Bass.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question to town attorney is, what would you consider adversely impacting the sales price?
Oh, okay. So, for example, there could be, theoretically, there could be conditions of a particular property. Let's say we're talking about 50 East Street, that property. Conditions relating to either the condition of the building or conditions relating to rights the town might want to reserve, such as rights to parking. You mentioned that earlier, to protect the theater works operation, or a restrictive covenant that of some type.
So wouldn't the seller, the town, or the agent of who we decide to be the seller, wouldn't they have to fully disclose that anyway?
Do you mean the realtor would need to?
Correct.
Okay, but the point is that if you're going to discuss tonight what is a reasonable fair market value or a potential sales price, you need to then start thinking about what would be a possibly appropriate listing price, because a listing agreement, which is being contemplated, would need to contain a listing price agreed upon. Councilman Zemansky mentioned he would like to see a licensed appraisal.
I'd like two,
Yeah,
before
so
we
would
even
I.
consider.
Some people might see the city want three. I'm not here to talk about that.
Yeah, I
I'm
think it's
saying is that
negligent if
public
not.
dialogue amongst yourselves, you might want to go into executive session to be able to speak freely in a way that does not effectively load the negotiating gun on the other side of
So
your buyer.
we were looking to sell the property across the street from the Brickyard. We did that in open session. We didn't go into executive session then.
And again, I'm not saying as a matter of law you need to go into
Right.
executive session. It's a policy decision of
Okay.
your
I
council.
understand. Thank you. Thank you.
So, can I ask you a question? So we do not have an appraisal as of right now of what that property is worth?
We
An
have a-
MIA, Master of Institute of Appraisers, which is an MIA, which is a commercial appraisal, which
Again,
anybody's gonna need.
Mr. Esposito, we're getting into things that are going to affect the town's ability to get a competitive purchase price. If you want to undercut what we discussed by pointing out all the reasons why
I don't
whatever
wanna,
price
no,
it is.
you're missing my point here.
Yeah.
Because we're going into executive session to discuss the sale price, and then we
Right.
come out of the executive session, you wanna sign a listing agreement with Scalzo Realty. Why would we go into it, why would we sign a listing or authorize you to sign a listing agreement with a commercial real estate broker until we have a full valuation discussed in executive session on what the value of the property is so we can come up with a reasonable price? I mean, I was in the real estate business for 25 years. I've never seen a transaction done on a commercial sale, signing a listing agreement before you actually know what the value of the property is and not in a discussion of 9 councilmen.
That's the
You
point
need-
of the executive session, though, is
But
for you to
coming
get a
out-
sense. Coming out, you could discuss it, vote on it, vote it down. It's not a foregone conclusion, but that's the point of the executive session, is that we could talk about this openly and freely amongst ourselves and discuss the pros, the cons, the strength, the weaknesses in a kind of way where you feel confident coming out voting one way or another. That's the reason why it's an executive session. If you want to throw it out on the table right now, that's fine. I mean, I'll call Kevin up here and, we'll talk about our strategy and why we came up with that number and what we think we could actually get for the price. But, you're going to cut us out from underneath the knees by doing that.
Listen, I never want to short sell us on this, but to come right out into open session and then agree, I think we should eliminate number C, wait for that discussion after we have come out of this and get ourselves a commercial appraiser on the property, at least one. Paul is correct, we should have 2, but at least a minimum of 1.
All right, let's address this.
about that.
Since
Should be-
I'd
should be
like to
made.
make a motion to go into executive session and invite Kevin Bielmeyer in. Do you want the town attorney in too?
Sure.
And the town attorney, John Teller.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion to go into an executive session? With the record kind of being explained that there would be a reasonable impact on the price if we were to continue to discuss the strengths, weaknesses, pros, cons, and ultimately what we think the property is worth, we want to sell it for before we
One
meet
final
with the seller.
comment, we are within 11 minutes of 10 o'clock, and this has been an exhaustive meeting. We're gonna go into executive session, which is gonna take, at this rate, an hour.
Depending on how much you talk, we could be here.
We could be here all night, that's my point.
Okay, I'll make a motion to extend the meeting time to 10:15.
Well, let's make it 10:30.
10:30?
Friendly amendment to 10:30.
I will accept. Second.
There's another motion on the floor.
Yeah, there's another
I
motion.
did. All right.
Thank you, Walter.
For parliamentarian.
All right.
Would you
so
withdraw
let's-
the first motion to,
Okay, I'll withdraw the
May I
first
ask-
motion.
We're still in the first motion discussion, right?
No, I
Oh,
was
I
just,
can't.
we're talking about the meeting time.
Okay.
So do we want to go till 10:15 or 10:30?
fine with 10:30?
I'm up at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, in New York.
Okay. So is there a second on the motion to extend the meeting time to 10:30? Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
2 opposing, Mr. Szymanski, Mr. Esposito. Motion carries. The meeting will be extended to 10:30. All right, now there was a,
Motion to go into executive session.
Question of information. Is 12B also going to be under discussion?
That would have to be.
that's
separate
your
motion.
town attorney update? Yeah,
That's pending litigation. That's a real.
yeah.
That's something we have to address.
Well, that would
So
be a
there's going to
separate
be an
motion.
executive session about something one way or...
That
Sure.
was two separate.
Okay.
All right, so did we vote on going into executive session?
Both town attorneys. Okay, there's a second? Yes, Mr.
You might want to bifurcate these.
Sure.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
totally.
okay. So, the motion is to go into an executive session on the potential sale of property at 50 East Street based on the reasonable impact on price as previously set forth. Is there any further discussion? It's been seconded.
Yes.
Mr. Szymanski.
I think it's extremely negligent of us as a town council to discuss a purchase price when we do not have an appraisal to rely upon whose expertise is solely to assist us with determining a sales price.
Sure. Well, we'll get to that in executive session.
No, I'm
Ms.
saying
Francis.
it's negligent of us
No,
to
no,
go.
no. That's
It's
your
not
opinion,
negligent.
but that's
right,
fine.
which I have the right to.
Exactly. So, Ms. Francis has a thought.
I just sort of have a question. Okay, so I asked if we had an appraisal, and the answer is, I guess, no. Does our economic development supervisor have the background that he's going to give us his best idea?
Why don't we
I
give
mean,
him
I
two
think.
He's going to give you the idea of where this number comes from and where we go from there.
Let's start, and you get your questions answered, and we'll get out of here by 10:30. At this
Spend a
rate, we're not
couple
even
grand
gonna
on an
get to.
appraisal and then talk
Is there
about
any
it.
further discussion on the motion to go into executive session on the 50 East Street issue? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, hold on, who's opposed? 4?
4 opposed?
Oh, I'm not opposed.
5 in
My hand up for
favor?
yes.
Doesn't count.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't go.
The motion carries.
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I need 2/3. That's right. Oh, excuse me. All right. Fair enough. So the motion does not carry.